Okay, muy buenos días. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a wonderful Washington, D.C. morning here at the OAS headquarters. We are in the Hall of the Americas, so it's my delight to welcome everyone to the Hall of the Americas. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas a todos a este Salón de las Américas. We're going to be having the inauguration of this Cyber South School on Internet Governance, and it is my distinct pleasure to introduce those whom we'll have to declare this session open. My name is Ian Edwards, and I'm here at the OAS headquarters, and it is my delight now to introduce to you, to give opening remarks for the opening ceremony, His Excellency Luis Almagro, the Secretary General of the Organization of American States, after which I'll introduce the next speaker. Thank you. Secretary General.
Es un honor que la Escuela del Sur de Gobernanza de Internet 2018 retorne a la OEA. Valoramos la oportunidad de discutir sobre el papel cada vez más crucial de ciberseguridad en las Américas, dentro del contexto de la gobernanza de Internet. Amigos, amigas, desde la última edición de la escuela llevada a cabo por la Secretaría General de la OEA en 2018, mucho se ha avanzado. Solo en 2017, 4 países de la región adoptaron una estrategia nacional de ciberseguridad y un total de 8 países ya cuentan con una estrategia nacional de ciberseguridad. Colombia, Chile, Costa Rica, Jamaica, México, Panamá, Paraguay y Trinidad y Tobago. Otros países ya se encuentran en proceso de formulación. De igual forma, el número de equipos de respuesta a incidentes de seguridad cibernética ha aumentado a 21. Tan solo este año hemos presentado 3 publicaciones. La primera sobre infraestructura crítica, la segunda trata de un llamado a la acción en ciberseguridad y la última está enfocada a la gestión del riesgo cibernético. Otros reportes en preparación incluyen el estado del sector bancario en las Américas y la actualización del estado de la ciberseguridad en América Latina y el Caribe, este último en asociación con el Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo. Internet puede contribuir a la mejora de la democracia porque posibilita participación directa de la población en la toma de decisiones. Sin embargo, para que Internet pueda ser utilizada de manera que la sociedad de la información alcance todo su potencial, es esencial que se establezcan mecanismos para la protección de los derechos humanos en línea. La ciberseguridad debe trabajar para que Internet siga siendo un espacio donde la democracia pueda alcanzar su plenitud, el desarrollo socioeconómico pueda seguir avanzando y los derechos humanos sean respetados. Para la Secretaría General de la OEA, la ciberseguridad es una responsabilidad compartida. Aunque todos los actores tienen un papel para asegurar un Internet abierto y seguro, donde el desarrollo socioeconómico de nuestra región pueda seguir avanzando. A través del programa de ciberseguridad de la Secretaría del Comité Interamericano contra el Terrorismo, la OEA se ha esforzado en construir un programa comprensivo de desarrollo de capacidades con el propósito de fortalecer la agenda de ciberseguridad en las Américas. Además de apoyar a los países en la formulación de programas nacionales de ciberseguridad, también hemos trabajado para comprender mejor el estado de madurez de la ciberseguridad en América Latina y el Caribe con estudios e informes. Y solo en la última década entrenamos más de 10.000 personas. Asimismo, la OEA tiene la misión de promover y coordinar la cooperación entre los Estados miembros de la organización, con visión de ser el principal referente hemisférico para el desarrollo de la cooperación y el fortalecimiento de las capacidades en materia de ciberseguridad. Entre el 28 de febrero y el 1 de marzo del 2018 se realizó en Washington la primera reunión del Grupo de Trabajo sobre medidas de fomento de la cooperación y confianza en el ciberespacio, lo cual contó con la participación de 26 delegaciones de Estados miembros de la OEA. Esto es un esfuerzo político en el ámbito de la diplomacia que podrá ayudar mucho a la región en su búsqueda por un ambiente cibernético seguro. En esta reunión participaron invitados especiales del sector privado y la sociedad civil, pues consideramos una prioridad involucrar a los sectores en el debate nacional e internacional de ciberseguridad. Este año también tendremos otras iniciativas con relevante participación para la sociedad civil, como la segunda edición del Foro de Género y Ciberseguridad, que se llevará a cabo en el próximo mes en la República Argentina. Así como en todas las áreas, estamos comprometidos en poder generar mayor inclusión y balance de género, y es indispensable incluir el aspecto digital. Otras actividades de carácter más técnico serán el Cybersecurity Bootcamp, que tendrá lugar en julio en España, cursos ejecutivos con la Universidad Internacional de Florida, en Buenos Aires y Washington, un simposio de ciberseguridad en esta misma sede y otras iniciativas que estaremos anunciando por nuestros canales oficiales. Con el objetivo de seguir fomentando la confianza en nuestra región, invito a cada uno de ustedes a reflexionar sobre cómo podemos contribuir para una Internet accesible y segura para todos, teniendo en cuenta la democracia, el desarrollo, los derechos humanos y la seguridad. Permítanme concluir agradeciendo a los gobiernos de Estados Unidos y Canadá por el apoyo financiero que ha brindado para hacer posible la participación de representantes de distintos sectores de las Américas en este evento. Gracias a todos por su presencia y por su interés en promover un mundo digital más inclusivo y seguro. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, señor secretario general. Y ahora, para presentar nada más a la señora Alice Noga-Strepel, who is the Executive Secretary of SICTE, who is here on the head table. La próxima persona para hablar en esta inauguración le toca al embajador, Su Excelencia Carlos Trujillo, the Permanent Representative of the United States to the OAS. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning. Mr. Secretary General, distinguished ambassadors, esteemed guests, thank you for joining us this morning. Today, we come together with a common desire to engage our communities on the topic of internet governance. It's inspiring to have so many minds here from different fields and to see all the young, eager people deepen their knowledge and engage on cyber policy and digital economy issues. In 2018, more than 3 billion people and devices are connected to the internet. 3 billion people and devices have been connected to the internet. These communications foster relationships and connect us to the world in a way that 50 years ago, in some cases even 5 years ago, seemed all but impossible. The internet helped to bridge the gap between talent and opportunity. It enables individuals and communities to connect on a platform through which they can contribute to economic, political, and social discourse. An accessible and open internet is an essential cornerstone of democracy. At the Department of State, we believe that this is worth preserving and championing. The United States is a longstanding partner of the OAS in its efforts to build cybersecurity capacity through this region. The Department of State's Office of Coordinator for Cyber Issues supports a number of projects within CICTE's cybersecurity program to increase access to knowledge on cyber threats and risks by decision makers, civil society, and internet users. We believe that enhancing cooperation and coordination among these stakeholders at the regional and international levels is an important contribution to promoting internet governance. Also within the OAS, the Department of State supports the Inter-American Telecommunications Commission, which plays a central coordination role in spectrum, telecommunications, and radio communications within the hemisphere. This is a true example of a private-public partnership where 67 private member companies and NGOs, including Verizon, Boeing, and AT&T, work with the region's governments to facilitate common standards and governance norms across the regions. These common standards support digital inclusion for all. Now more than ever, we have a shared responsibility to be leaders of fair internet governance, to strive for open, interoperable, secure, and reliable cyberspace. We must not be complacent in pursuing our vision of the future. By supporting youth engagement on cyber policy and digital economy issues, we are working to empower citizens and boost economic opportunity. Through education, they gain the tools to thrive in the labor force in a world in which digital economy continues to grow, creating both disruption and, more importantly, opportunity. As I conclude, I want to thank everyone for their attendance this morning. I am confident that over the course of this event, you will use this arena to strengthen your efforts and help move your communities and our region closer to achieving our objective of developing our region, boosting our economics, and securing our cyberspace by leading through fair internet governance. Thank you.
And thank you, Ambassador Trujillo. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. The scenario is outlined for you in terms of what the Inter-American system is engaged in on this very important topic, as well as some of the challenges that have been put out there, which no doubt will be the focus of the discussions that ensue. So we want to thank you all for your attention. And for the next session, the Secretary General will take his leave, as well as the Ambassador. And so if you'll allow us as we get ready for the next segment. Thank you, sir. Good to meet you, Ambassador. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so the stage has been set, and we no doubt will be looking forward to the next 3 days of intense, perhaps excited, spirited discussion on what has become one of the most important issues of the day, internet governance. It is my pleasure now to introduce the keynote speaker for the next segment, the keynote address on the fourth industrial revolution, the evolution of the internet and the digital economy, for which I introduce to you Mr. Camille Samaha. He's AWS America's lead security architect. Mr. Kamaha? Mr. Kamaha, it is your turn, sir.
I just need a clicker. Good morning, everyone. I'm Camille Samaha. I am with Amazon Web Services. All right, let's just give it a second for the presentation to get activated. But as this is coming up, just give you a little bit of background about myself. Can you hear? Okay, I will try to put it a little bit higher. I'm tall. Is this better? Perfect, thank you. I've been with Amazon for about 7 years now, and it's been quite lucky from a perspective of witnessing firsthand a once-in-a-lifetime I would call it a revolution in the business world, in particularly the IT environment. Now, if the presentation comes up, I'll go ahead and get started. What we've seen in the industry is, if you looked over the past 100 years or so, a successful company, you would expect it to stay in business for a lifetime, 60 plus years. But as the rate of innovation has accelerated, what we have seen is that lifespan has come down to about 15 years. So if you're successful and you don't try to keep up with the rate of innovation, you're only going to be around for about 15 years for an S&P 500 company. At the same time, what we have seeing is about 2/3 of IT budgets are being spent on maintaining infrastructure and keeping the lights on. And that also is directly related to what CISOs and CIOs and CEOs are telling us, is that they are lacking the budgets and resources to keep up with more sophisticated threat landscape out there, and the risk to their infrastructure is getting higher by the day. Is it possible to get the presentation going, please? All right, well, we're going to fly blind. What that translates to government organizations, perfect, we're almost there. Third slide, okay. I can't advance it this way. All right, I'll go blind. What that means, oh, it's over there. Okay, great, thank you. I still can't advance it. We're having technical difficulties. Next slide, please. What that translates to government agencies, educational institutions, corporations, is that they're finding themselves spending resources just to try to keep the business going, instead of diverting those resources to thinking about new ideas and innovating to try to stay ahead of competitors or to try to meet the requirements of your citizens. If you think about the millennial generation, I can talk about my kids. I have a cell phone that is 2 years old, and they always make fun of me that I'm not keeping up with the times. They are used to having instantaneous satisfaction at their fingertips. They are not used to waiting in queues. They are not used to having to fill paperwork to get any task accomplished. And as government agencies, as corporations, we need to be able to keep up with the changing landscape. Otherwise, market disruptors are coming in and taking away those opportunities. So it's really critical to stay alive and relevant in today's environment. And that also translates to the lack of resources, as I mentioned, to be able to reduce the risk to your organizations as the threat landscape is becoming more and more sophisticated. Next slide, please. So what organizations, government agencies, and companies are turning towards is a new approach to infrastructure and IT infrastructure, and that is the cloud. They are trying to focus their resources instead of maintaining their infrastructure. They want to shift those resources to the ability to focus on their missions and the ability to deliver to citizen services, while at the same time establishing a culture of innovation, allowing builders to build and come up with new ideas that will keep them relevant in their marketplace, and doing so while reducing their risk. Next slide, please. So, next slide. So what we're seeing from going around the world and talking to various governments and various educational institutions, nonprofit organizations, as well as corporations, what has become very clear is none of those entities have been put in place unless they are in a hosting company. They were not created to build, maintain, and secure their infrastructure. They were put in place to deliver on their mission to their citizens and to their consumers and to their end users. And in that sense, what we're seeing is a lot of corporations offloading this undifferentiated heavy lifting to cloud service providers, particularly hyperscale cloud service providers, so that they could remove the guesswork from a capacity planning perspective. They can remove the burden on their security engineers to try to secure an infrastructure that is not their primary or core mission or focus. Next slide. Okay, perfect. I'm able to switch. So instead of the focus on the maintenance aspects of it, they're able to shift and retrain their staff to work on projects that provide value to the citizens and provide value to the end consumers, while at the same time dedicating more focus from a cybersecurity perspective dedicating more focus on the just basic maintenance from a security hygiene perspective, as well as trying to keep up with the quickly changing environment where you have either an individual hacker or organized, nationally backed attempts to penetrate and do espionage on sensitive data. Now, with what we're seeing from a trend perspective, as you alleviate the burden and the focus from a resource perspective from maintenance of infrastructure, we're seeing the focus of organizations to take that surplus and put it into what we call as builders. Those are the generation, the innovators that have new ideas. Now, if you think about it from a traditional sense, it is really have been ingrained from both an operational and a budgetary aspects that it is a culture of saying no. There are many challenges along the way of someone having a new idea in order to see that idea and have it become a service that is available to our citizens. So it's instead, well, actually, if you think about it from a procurement perspective, you have to have procurement vehicles in place. You have to have a budget approved and an order placed with a vendor. And it typically takes weeks for that product to be delivered. And then you have to unpack it, you have to rack it, you have to configure it, you have to connect it to your network. And that translates to weeks, if not months, of time before an idea is presented to when you're able to deliver it, if it passes through all those gates. And if you think about it, security is the biggest culprit of the no organization. If you compare that to an environment where you think about IT resources as a utility, where you can consume and pay for those resources when you need it and when you instantiate it, and then turn it off when you don't need it. That shortcuts that time of weeks, if not months, to minutes. Now, that does not preclude you from having the responsibility to establish the right governance models. You need to put the right frameworks to give you the security and the compliance guardrails so that when your developers and your operations teams are able to deliver services, they fall within a framework that assures you that they are compliant to your security requirements. Now, we're all here to talk about security and cyber risk. So how does that really translate to risk? If you think about security in a traditional data hosting environment and security in the cloud, the underlying principles are all the same. It's no different wherever you decide to host your applications and services. But the two main challenges from talking to customers that we always hear is a lack of visibility in a traditional environment, where if you are doing a very good job, you typically have an audit of what you have deployed in your environment once, maybe twice a year. And as soon as that report hits the CIO's desk, it's already outdated. The environment is continuously changing, and the biggest challenge from a security perspective is not understanding what's happening in that environment on an ongoing and real-time basis. And that's what we refer to visibility and lack of visibility. It's always been a major challenge. And that also translates to the inability to automate. Because as you automate, you remove the burden of your security engineers of focusing on remedial day-to-day tasks and have them focus on higher value initiatives. Now, in that environment, it really is not uncommon to have to make a choice between delivering applications in a rapid pace to try to keep up with the market demands and the citizens' requirements, or remaining secure. And as we all know, security typically trumps all. So ultimately, that limits your ability to innovate. Now, if you shift the burden of having to build, maintain, and secure the underlying infrastructure, it gives you the ability to be more flexible and to focus your attention on securing the application, embedding security in the development life cycle of your development culture. That allows you to both move fast and stay secure. And that's what I'm going to spend the rest of my short talk about. Oops, I went one, okay. So some of the biggest lessons learned and trends as I go around and talk to government officials and educational institutions and NGOs and S&P 500 companies or small and medium-sized enterprises is the fact, that one of the biggest advantages is that as the underlying infrastructure has been developed in a cloud environment, it takes the learning from hundreds of thousands of customers running any imaginable workload on that infrastructure. And that learning is reinvested in infrastructure from a security and compliance perspective to raise the bar and be able to be certified by a large number of both internationally recognized standards as well as country-level frameworks. And the beauty of it is a single individual or developer that leverages the infrastructure to the largest organization, whether it be a corporation or a government agency, inherits all of that underlying security and security controls and assurance frameworks. All of that becomes available to the consumers to take advantage of. This is only a splash screen of a sampling of the standards and compliance frameworks that AWS in particular, I can only talk to AWS, but other hyperscale providers have similar accomplishments. So there are thousands of underlying controls that are required to be met to be able to be certified. Very early on, our security and assurance teams realized that there are a tremendous amount of overlaps between all these standards. So ultimately, the security controls that are needed to secure your environments are very well known and very well defined. So if you are early in the stages of trying to create a framework that gives you the security assurance for your workloads and applications, we strongly recommend that you consider leveraging internationally recognized standards that are well-known, continuously vetted and evolved, and even more importantly, that auditors are very familiar with and they fully understand and they're able to test, verify, document, and make that body of documentation available to everyone to leverage. Now, there will be some gaps depending on the environments, and it's perfectly okay to complement these internationally recognized frameworks with your own security controls to meet your specific environments. But the bulk of the controls are common across all of those various standard bodies and frameworks that you see. So, we advocate for leveraging those internationally recognized security controls. Now, this is opaque on purpose. It could be very intimidating to run a global infrastructure depending on the scope of your environment. Now, a cloud infrastructure was built from the beginning inherently to try to address some of the major challenges from a security perspective, and primarily the ability to have full visibility into your environment. Anything and everything within a cloud environment is API driven, and that's the technologist in me speaking. What that really means is everything is, you can program the entire infrastructure and treat it as code. What that does is it gives you incredible level of visibility into what's running right now, who's accessing it, who has access to it, from where people are trying to access it. So, and who has control over the particular access and an authorization perspective. And it's also quite important to point out that any data that and applications that is put on top of that cloud infrastructure remains in full control of the owner of that data, the organizations or the end users. And they also can leverage a very rich toolkit from a authentication and authorization perspective to decide where to put that data, who has access to move it, where to move it, if they want to modify it, if they want to delete it. So all of that remains in full control of the owner of the data, and that's you, either the government agency, the developer, or the entrepreneur with a startup. Now, one topic that typically comes up when I'm talking to CEOs and CIOs is data residency. We have a global infrastructure with physical presence in dozens of countries. But where those data centers are built have nothing to do from a security perspective. It's been, time and time again, when a data breach occurs, an event that we've seen in the past several years, data locality had nothing to do with it. It really came down to, in most cases, about basic security hygiene, patching, establishing the right procedures internally to prevent unintended leakage of data. Not in a single occurrence did where the data resides come into play. It provides no material bearing to have a more secure or less secure environment where the data sits. And from a data privacy perspective, one central element that people and organizations are leveraging is a vast access to encryption tools, whether on one end of the spectrum is completely off hands, where the encryption and the management of the cryptographic keys are the responsibility of the cloud provider, to the other end of the spectrum, where the user has full control and ownership of their cryptographic keys, and they leverage those keys to encrypt their data on the cloud. And a very important fact from a privacy perspective is, if you choose to delete or forget that key, that data becomes useless and inaccessible by anybody. All right. Now, from an automation perspective, it really is important to try to shift the focus of your security organization from basic checklist tasks to removing humans from that workflow as much as possible. As humans, we have very good intentions typically, but we are very prone to try to short-circuit processes, especially after we do it repeatedly, day after day, week after week, month after month. We become overconfident, we try to short-circuit that process, and we've caused a security event. So as much as possible, if you take anything out of this morning's talk, try to take humans out of the security workflow through automation as much as possible. The cloud environment gives you the ability to try to automate all of those functions. And I have a very simple example on the screen. I don't expect everyone on here to recognize some of the services that I have displayed. Is purely just to illustrate the power of the automation, where you have a service like guard duty detect any anomalous or unusual activities on a server or a virtualized instance of a server, and automatically notifies other services so they could take appropriate remediation action based on policies that you would able to set, as simply as notifying the security team to fully and automatically isolating that particular server from ingress and egress traffic, taking a snapshot of the data volume, and in effect, making all of that available to your investigative team and forensics team to establish if and what happened for that particular server. So automation at a level that were unimaginable just a few years ago is at the fingertips of consumers. Now, this is a menu. I don't expect you to read the small print. It's just to demonstrate the vast, a large amount of native, cloud-native solutions that are available to your security teams to try to address some of the most, the common functions, starting from identity to securing and protecting your data, to taking actions in response to incidents. So when I talk about innovation, I'm not only talking from a consumer side. From a cloud provider perspective, there's continuous innovation as far as the services that are offered. And I'm only highlighting the services that are related to security. And all of those are available to organizations and governments and corporations to take advantage, if they choose to try to remove the burden on their security teams. And this does not replace third-party solutions that you are familiar and very well trained in. This complements that and gives, because there's a rich partner ecosystem of solutions that are well integrated with the clouds and the various clouds that are available to you out there. So innovation works both from a service provider and as well as your ability to innovate and meet the requirements of your consumers and citizens and end users. So in short, cloud used to be a new paradigm that people thought about, but it really has become the new normal. Whether it's building new applications natively on the cloud or migrating existing workloads to take advantage of the services and underlying security that is inherited with the cloud infrastructure. What does that really mean to the public sector? I work in the public sector. Next slide, please. So there are, if the slide comes up, there are thousands of government agencies, nonprofit organizations, educational institutions, and NGOs who are leveraging the cloud to further increase their capabilities to meet their missions and deliver on projects that are truly transforming the world. From an economic development perspective, when I talked about S&P 500 companies' lifespans that is reduced from 60 or so years to 15 years, the true cause of it is startups, entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized enterprises are able to leverage the cloud and in effect bring down barriers which were unthinkable to try to penetrate markets 20 years ago. Those barriers are going away. The amounts of investment to try to disrupt the market has been reduced significantly. from an economic development perspective, that allows a new generation of entrepreneurs and startups and small and medium-sized enterprises to be major disruptors and to drive economic development. With that said, I want to thank you for listening to me this morning. Hopefully I was able to provide some useful information for you. Thank you. Sure. Happy to take a couple of questions if.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Camille, for your remarks. We have a broad audience in the room from all over the Americas. Perfect. And also we have some fellows from Europe. Many of them, it's a multi-stakeholder group. We have people that work for the government, for security offices in the government, civil society, private sector, academy. So before opening the floor to questions, if you have some time, I would like to ask you, if from a developing country perspective, a country that is working on their security strategy, perhaps starting to think about it at the national level, as you're a security specialist, and with such a broad infrastructure that you have shown a minute ago, which would be your advice for steps to follow to set up a strategy, and also to look at the infrastructure from a global perspective, but with taking consideration the local security? Let me tell you why I'm asking this. Sometimes I have talked with several colleagues in the Americas, and I have perceived that feeling of having the infrastructure located at the country for being a major thing, like a national infrastructure brings perhaps more security or not. So perhaps your perspectives about that concept could help our colleagues that are in the first stages of developing a security strategy.
Yep, happy to answer. I think there are two questions in there. The first one, the one thing I try to advocate and recommend is, as you are considering security policies or strategies, try to avoid focusing on tools or specific tools that your security organizations might be familiar with. Instead, try to focus on outcomes. The main driver behind that recommendation is the threat landscape is evolving quite rapidly, and you don't want to be slowed down by a particular point solution that might not be able to keep up with that changing landscape. So if you focus on the desired outcomes from a security perspective, you'll be able to have the vast amount of resources and solutions out there that are not specific to a particular vendor to help you deliver on those outcomes. So traditionally, when you would see RFIs or RFPs that hit the street, you would find very specific and prescriptive requirements are really targeting a particular technology. Try to shy away from that and concentrate at a higher level desired outcome, and let your security teams and engineering teams decide which is the appropriate solution to be able to deliver on that outcome. From a data center locality perspective, I touched on it a little bit earlier. It really does not provide, from a security perspective, any additional benefits. If your data is in any way, shape, or form connected to a public network, whether that be the internet or even a community network, it is susceptible or it is at risk of at least potential attempts to try to compromise that data. It really does not matter for a hacker or an organization of hackers where that data resides. From a remote perspective, it doesn't matter. Security, data residency does not give you any advantages from a security perspective. When we build, from a requirements perspective, when we decide on where to put those data centers and build that infrastructure, it really is driven by the proximity to the market and to the end consumers. And I know Andy Jassy, our CEO, always says is, in time, we will have physical infrastructure everywhere. Right now, it's just a matter of prioritization as far as what the market demand is. It really is not driven from a security point of view.
I see your point, and there is some debate in the national regulations sometimes talking about locating the servers in the country. And I agree with you that it's something to have in mind, as it not necessarily means that it's more secure, or yes, but it's not necessarily tied to that.
I mean, I can certainly understand feeling that way, and it's not uncommon, and it's not wrong to think that if I can see the server, if I can see the data center where that server is located, I'll feel better about it, but it really does not provide any security advantages.
Thank you, Camille. I don't want to capture all the questions. We have a question from Jorge. I don't know if there are roving mics. And if someone else wants to make a question, just raise your hand so I can see you from here.
Good morning. Thank you, Amin, for your remarks. They have been very interesting. I mean, I'm coming from Mexico, so the question that I have for you is, given that cybersecurity is a borderless, situation, and I think everybody agrees that we need to fight cybercrime more effectively, do you think a new international treaty or convention should be reached, particularly, as Olga mentioned, to work on the attribution of the cybercrime? So that's my question. Some companies are proposing, for example, the Geneva Convention, a new Geneva Convention, which is going to be called a Digital Geneva Convention. Do you think, we need that?
I'd love to be able to answer that. I'm not the right person. It does sound like a good idea, but frankly, I'm not qualified enough to be able to make that statement authoritatively. I think anything that can be done from an international cooperation perspective to agree on a certain language, certain technologies that can be leveraged across the board from an information sharing perspective, threat signature sharing, all of that is very beneficial. Unfortunately, I cannot give you a better answer. I'm not the right person, sorry.
That's a good idea. We can work on that for the future. No sean tímidos, pueden hacer la pregunta en español. Yo puedo ayudar a traducir. The colleague in the front row.
Hello, thank you very much for your interesting talk. I was wondering, you're giving a out-of-the-box solution of security, right? In one point. And how, in one point, you have to absorb the challenge of identifying new threats. So threats that had not been identified in the past. How do you deal with that challenge for Amazon in this case?
Very good question. Primarily, this is where it's really important to understanding what your baseline network behavior is, and then leveraging new technologies such as machine learning and artificial intelligence to detect any anomalies beyond what is expected normal behavior from the network. As you can imagine, we have over 1 million active customers, and we have a very broad view of, at a high level, what the typical patterns are from a network and traffic perspectives. So we truly invest quite heavily in proactive measures and not reactive measures. If you have still in a reactive mode, by the time you realize something is happening, it's already too late. So I would say we've moved way beyond that stage, and a lot of the investments that we make are more on the proactive, getting ahead of potential attacks as we detect any anomalies and behavioral changes at a high level, leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence. And we're taking that capability as it is common, and I can only speak for AWS. We take any internally developed capabilities are from day one. They are reviewed in mind that we will ultimately make those available to our end customers as well as we develop them and become more mature. So we do it as a service provider, and we're starting to service those through native solutions to consumers as well.
Thank you, Camille. More questions from Camille. Más preguntas. Pueden hacerlas en español, yo puedo traducir, o él puede escuchar la traducción.
I apologize, I don't speak Spanish.
Oh, no problem.
try.
Always time to learn. Okay, Catherine, yes.
Thank you for your presentation. Catherine Garcia Fajostrato from the Hague University. I actually have one question. I don't know if you're aware about the current amendments to the cybersecurity law in the EU, the European Union. And in fact, one of the most strongest amendments that have been proposed is about the disclosure of vulnerability in software. Disclosure of vulnerability in software, which was not yet in the cybersecurity. So I'm talking about the Network Information Security Directive. So basically, what would be your opinion if you have actually probably take into account this new proposal of amendment, or if you are familiar in any way with any action that Amazon is doing in regards to this?
I'm not aware of any formal statement that particularly addresses that new amendment. I'm not familiar with it, I have to admit. It's not within my scope of responsibilities, but in general, from a disclosure perspective, as far as any potential compromises that affect customers, so you can think of it of two ways. If there's any compromise, we are very transparent and from that perspective, and this is not related to the amendment itself. I'm not familiar what the requirements are, but we are very transparent as far as any potential compromises that might affect our end customers and users, and we publish that on our website and automatically notify consumers through that site. But more importantly, is there's not a single day that goes by where we don't have an auditor in our environment testing, validating, documenting, and producing a body of evidence that is available to all of our customers, attesting to the security of the underlying infrastructure and software that gives our end users, one, the assurance that they're operating on a secure infrastructure, and two, they can inherit some of those controls to ensure that their environments are secure as well. So probably not the answer you're looking for. I'm really not the right person. I apologize.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Andre from Data Intelligence. Thank you very much, and I was expecting from your authoritative knowledge about security. I have a very burning question. The more you know the origin of your threats, the more you can be prepared. I remember when the allegation of interference in our election, here in America, the source has been so difficult to be pronounced. let's say, Russia attack our system election. But it's kind of difficult for some people to affirm it. And the question that I have for you is, knowing that if you know the source of if you can know the origination of the threat you are facing, where you are attacking from, I was expecting that from MAC ID, from IP's address, all that, it'll be easy to locate where I've been attacking from. Now, from your authoritative knowledge of security, can you please tell me, why is it so difficult to know where the threats are coming from to get better prepared? And what is your take on it? How do you prepare to know who are coming basically with belligerent intent or to sabotage your system, and how you prepare for that?
Yeah, where the attack is coming from, I mean, if you look into the security community, there are very well-known threat actors out there that you could monitor, but you certainly should not and cannot sit on your laurels and expect that attacks will only come from those sources. So in effect, you have, and we do take the stance that attacks can and will come from anywhere. Where they're coming from is really irrelevant. Other from the perspective of we understand the capabilities of certain actors and what to expect, but we certainly don't operate in a mode that attacks will only come from those well-known actors. It's really not that hard to identify some attacks where they're coming from, but with the advent of the internet and this global connectivity, there are many ways that attackers can obfuscate who they are and where they're coming from. So it's really important not to jump into conclusions based on initial findings, because in some cases it requires quite a bit of digging to understand where it came from and what really happened. And in some cases you can't tell because of the nature of leveraging backdoors on common devices such as laptops or digital boxes in consumers' homes to generate attacks.
More questions for Camille? Yes, there in the back. It's coming. The room is big.
Me haces el honor de traducirme porque los gobiernos suelen ser celosos de la información y consideran que es indispensable mantener sus propios data centers para guardarla. ¿Cómo ha visto este cambio en Latinoamérica? ¿Qué países latinoamericanos han cambiado de forma de pensar y tal vez identificar qué elementos de esos países los han hecho cambiar? Y optar por reconocer la dificultad técnica de proteger esa data y contratar servicios en la nube extranjera.
Okay, it's a similar question to what I asked before. Some countries are cautious about having the infrastructure located at their own premises. How you have seen this shift or any change in Latin America, if you have seen some countries that are looking at it in a different way, and how you have seen that evolving in our region?
My colleague is pointing at me that he wants to answer that question, I think. Is that right, Andres? Oh, the time. I couldn't hear him.
We cannot hear you, Andres. ¿Va a responder después fuera de línea?
Oh, no, it's okay. She
Okay.
translated it. Okay, sounds good. So if I heard the question correctly, let me try to repeat it. It's, have we seen any shift in the approach about data or data locality in Latin America?
Yeah, it's something similar to what I asked before.
It certainly is, like I mentioned before, I've been to Colombia, I believe, but my team goes to various countries in Latin America to talk about data residency and other security-related aspects. It is a slow process, but we are seeing more understanding of the relation between data residency and security, primarily that it doesn't provide you any benefits, material benefits from a localization perspective. Has there been a shift in attitude? Certainly in the conversations, after repeated conversations, we see better understanding and willingness to consider alternatives and options and really concentrate on policies that provide flexible security frameworks where data residency does not come into play. One of those that seems to be gaining quite a bit of attraction is data classification, is ensuring that your data is classified from a sensitivity perspective to determine the threat level or importance of that data and how you want to approach securing it, including where you want to host it. Just to advocate for my team, we'll be producing a white paper in a short term on data classification as a resource that everybody could leverage and understand how to take advantage of that initiative to better produce policies to secure the various sensitivity of data in your environment.
Thank you, Camille. Andrés, tomo tu compromiso de enviarnos la información. La podemos compartir con todos los fellows. I think we are running out of time. More questions? Last question? No? Okay, Camille, thank you very much for your time, for sharing your knowledge with us. And you're always welcome to join again to our schools. We organize it once a year. And let's stay in touch, and maybe you have information for the students or something else to share with us. Thank you very much. Un aplauso para Camille.
Fantastic, thank you.